Imagine you have a rare disorder that causes your heart to slow to a near standstill. Imagine you black out one day and wake up in darkness in a small box. The smell of silent cement heavy in your nostrils. You scream but no one can hear you. You push at the top of the box but it's not budging. Your breathing quickens. Then all of a sudden you realize you've been buried alive. Cases of being accidentally buried alive date back to the 14th century when the corpse of philosopher John Duns Scotus was reportedly found outside his coffin with bloodied hands. Since then, there have been countless stories of people hearing cries and wails of deaths longing to get out of their coffins. The fear of being buried alive, or taphophobia, has been around as long as we have been burying our deads. The fear was so great that the people in the 18th century started to invent safety coffins. One sort of the safety coffins, designed by Dr. Johann Gottfried Taberger in 1829, alerted a cemetery night watchman by a bell which was activated by a rope connected to strings attached to the hands, feet, and head of the corpse after reviving inside the grave. In fact, a social reformer named William Tebb recorded many premature burial cases. By 1905, he had collected 149 accounts of live burial, as well as 219 accounts of people who were almost but not quite buried alive. Humans haven't always been able to tell exactly whether or not a person was truly dead. Before advances in modern medicine, being buried alive was a fairly reasonable concern. Even among doctors, the definition of death wasn't fully agreed upon. A person was dead when a doctor said he is dead. If the heart stopped beating long enough, the person was assumed to be dead. But a stopped heart often can be restarted. This is routine during heart surgery. Likewise, someone who stops breathing can be kept alive by mechanical ventilator. If both the heart and breathing cease, physicians may institute CPR. When the physicians decide to stop CPR and declare a person dead is a matter of discretion, not an established fact. This uncertainty over the moment of the death is nothing new and has long time concerned scientists and the public. Until the 1950s, death was considered to be the point when any one of the vital functions, heartbeat or respiration, ceased. But they forgot about the most important organ, the brain. Let's have a cursory look at some parts of this vital organ. The brain is composed of three parts: the cerebrum, which is the center of thoughts, memory, and sensation; the cerebellum, the function of which is to help maintaining the body's sense of balance; the brainstem, which is the main control center for breathing, the heart, and blood circulation. If cerebrum or cerebellum dies, the patient is able to live an abnormal life, which is called a vegetative state. As long as the brainstem is alive, if any of the other major faculties or functions, such as the heart or breathing, stops temporarily, it may be saved and treated. But if the brainstem dies, this is what leads to the end of human's life. This means they will not regain consciousness or be able to breathe without support. There is no hope of saving it. Rather, the patient's life has ended. It wasn't until 1959 that the two French neurologists Maurice Goulon and Pierre Malaret changed the definition of death by defining it based on neurological criteria instead of cardiopulmonary criteria. They really saved us from being buried alive by stating a specific, unquestionable definition for death. The irreversible loss of consciousness can and should be defined as death. Now here is another fact that might surprise you. When you sleep, your brainstem is almost inactive. And there are those who argue that sleep is also a loss of consciousness due to the inactivity of brainstem effector neurons when a person is sleeping. The brainstem also becomes inactive when a person dies, causing a loss of consciousness as well. And it is for this very specific reason that doctors, when declaring a patient dead, should limit their declaration to the state of brainstem and nothing else. Furthermore, it was discovered by McCarroll and Sinton in Scholarpedia in 2008 that when we sleep, the effector neurons in our brainstem becomes hyperpolarized and have nearly no action potentials, nearly as if the brainstem died. It means death is like sleep and sleep is like death. While that might seem like identical definitions, there's one minor difference. Loss of consciousness during sleep is reversible, while loss of consciousness due to death is irreversible. And this is how beautifully Qur'an described this fact 1400 years ago by describing consciousness as a synonym for the soul.
الله يتوفى الأنفس حين موتها والتي لم تمت في منامها فيمسك التي قضى عليها الموت ويرسل الأخرى إلى أجل مسمى إن في ذلك لآيات لقوم